and or watching to the Black Eagles podcast, a Beşiktaş talk show.
Ahmet Dursun Sergen aldı. Sergen Bülent yan yana. Sergen Bülent. Sergen. Yanında Tümer var. Tümer'e doğru atışını kaybetti. Tümer topu aldı. Sergen aldı. Gol! Gol! Gol! Sergen attı. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi. Sergen attı. Şampiyonluk geldi.
İbrahim'in pası. Roma. Şimdi Ahmet. İkinci gole gidiyor Beşiktaş. Ahmet.
Hello Black Eagles, welcome back to the Black Eagles podcast. Today Ural, our good friend, the Dutch Eagle, is joining us because of course, as you know, he is our in-house financial expert and he's going to elaborate a little bit on the financial audit that was recently conducted upon the request of Serdal Adali to ascertain whether or not there were any financial wrongdoings done by the previous Hassan Arat administration. And this is also the first time that we're recording a video as a live stream for our members only. So our YouTube members, our Patreon members, the members of the group, the WhatsApp community chat. Not all of you are Patreon and so on members, but we are going to allow an exclusive set of people to come in and ask questions as Ural explains this recent audits, or at least elaborates on some interesting findings he had. We are recording this on Thursday, I think it's Thursday, at 7:30. So hopefully some of the members are able to jump on and ask questions. So if you're in the live chat, guys, say hi. And as Ural is going through his findings, please feel free to ask some questions that are topical to the subject. It's possible that we'll get a very few questions because this was a spur of the moment idea of mine to turn this into a live stream. But going forward in the future, it is the intention that these kind of videos, the transfer highlight videos, stuff like that, you know, the things that go exclusively on Patreon and members only on YouTube for a while before they become available readily to the public, that we are going to allow our members to be able to come in and ask questions. Anyway, that's my little explanation. Ural, I'm going to hand over the microphone to you because I have not done any research. I haven't read the audit at all, so I am prepared to be amazed by your constatations, good sir.
Let's see if I can surprise you. But happy to be here. Thank you for the invite again, and I hope I can give some flavor to this 125 pages report. Also, hope to give a little bit of an interpretation, objective interpretation, as the Black Eagle podcast always does to this report, which has been quite some sensational news on social media. They'll try to make sensational news. So happy to dive into this. So looking forward, and please let me know any questions. I've read the report, but there's a lot in it, so I might have missed things. So please forgive me if I've missed things. But please fire away with questions if you have them. And I think before I ask a question to Kaan, a few remarks. So the report was done by the internal audit group. That's done. They review it per period within Beşiktaş. So there's an internal board, as they call it, that reviews the performance of the board, the financial performance of the board, and can give advice based on their findings. So this is done regularly. This is not special because of the past period. This is done on a regular basis. It's for the period from 1 June 2023 until 30th of November 2024. So that's also good to know, because then you know what the time period is they looked into and they reviewed. So it's basically not all Hassan Arat's board. Mm-hmm. It also has a couple of months still in the of the Anche period.
Oh, okay. That's good. Yeah.
Yeah. And the scope is the financial, operational, and financial activities of the board in that period. As I said, it gives an evaluation and a recommendation. The board cannot discipline or sanction based on their findings. That's up to the current board and the disciplinary board, of course.
Yeah.
And also, I want to indicate that not all audit reports are done. So there are a couple of topics that they still are reviewing, and there's also an external accountant that will review the financial, officially review the financial situation of Beşiktaş, which is necessary since it's a public company. They will have to have an independent accountant giving their review.
Okay, so this wasn't commissioned specifically to find wrongdoings by the previous board then? This was actually already scheduled regardless?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think if you look to the report, I think that it was also discussed to look at specific points because they're really aimed towards certain subjects. And I think that also has a little bit to do with what Serdal Adali has asked or has stated in public. So, So before we begin, I actually wanted a bit do it like a menu. There are a couple of topics. I will name the topics, and then you can choose, Kaan, to start to see which topic to start with. Okay. There's a lot to talk about, but I also want to leave it to you how much you want to talk about what subject. So it's up to you. You can choose, and then we will just dive into it per subject. So the subjects of today, there are actually 4 subjects. The first one is finance and operations. The second one is memberships. Mm-hmm. The third one are the tenders for roof, lighting, and the field. Yeah. And the fourth one is IT. So up to you.
Well, you know what? Let's start with the tenders, because that is something that has been quite controversial recently with the lighting, the new lighting system being installed. Supposedly, Fenerbahce got a very similar lighting system installed for 700,000 euros, and we paid 2.5 million euros. So let's get into that one first. That's very interesting, I think.
Yeah. And sort of the fifth, which is not the real talk, but sort of the general conclusion. Mm-hmm. That's also I've written down their general conclusion, so we can also go through that, so you get an idea what the audit board's conclusion is. But let's start with tenders, otherwise it's just too much naming things. Yeah. So the lighting or the roof? Which one did you say?
With the lighting and the new lighting in the stadium.
Okay. Yeah. So the lighting process, it's as follows. Well, their findings are as follows. There was a total cost of 2,250,000 euros, and there was no tender. So the main argument is that the Beşiktaş has the Beşiktaş rules, internal rules, say that there needs to be a tender. Yeah. Instead of asking a company, okay, could you give me a quote, and based on that quote, we will sort of go with you or with another club. So the procedures were not followed as they should be, exactly. So the quotes were questioned earlier already by audit, but the response from the board, so the Hasan Arat board, was not, basically not provided. What they did was they asked for received one quote, and then additionally later on, based on those questions from the audit board, they sent 2 more proposals. But the audit board says that these 2 proposals were basically, quotes were basically for show, because it seems, based on internal communication, that the board had already decided with the first quote.
Yeah, and was it given to somebody close to the board or anything like that?
Yeah, I'm gonna. Yeah, well, you're sort of feeling it, right? There was another lower proposal so a proposal with a lower number that
Yeah.
was hidden from the audit group. So they found out there was another proposal with a much lower quote,
Yeah.
but that was not shared with the audit group.
Huh.
So basically the tender, well, not the tender, but the quotes, or the company that was selected, what they found out, or what they say, is that basically the answer from Khan Shakul and Chalian, well, the guy who was responsible for these type of operations, they responded and said, well, the owner of the the lighting company is a good Beşiktaş fan, and he gave a discount.
Wow.
To the club, because it's for the club.
Yeah.
But what's strange here is that the other offers were substantially lower to this offer.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's sort of in a nutshell the finding of audit. And they also say, why was there a necessity to change or replace the lighting? Because according to UEFA, the lighting is good. It fulfills the needs or the requirements of UEFA.
Yeah.
There's a championship final, the Europa League final and the Conference League final. They will be played in Istanbul, the Beşiktaş Stadium. So why was there a necessity to replace it right now when there were so many financial constraints? That's a question asked or posed by audit. Apart from, why didn't you go for the lower offer?
And did they actually justify the decision? Did they answer it? Or is it just like right now the audit is asking these questions and now they have X amount of time to respond to these questions or something like that? Or did they already give a response?
No, not to this report or the final questions, but their initial response. So when they were talking about these quotes, their answer was, well, one, that the owner of the company was a Beşiktaş fan and gave a discount, and two, they wanted to improve the lighting because they felt that it was barely sufficient according to the UEFA rules, and they didn't go into why didn't they go for the lower quotes, or sort of they didn't make a comparison why this was better.
Yeah.
Technically than the others, so to say.
So pure nepotism, essentially. Is this something that they are going to be? How should I put it? Are they going to be legally responsible? Is it possible to hold them legally responsible for this?
Yeah. So this is one of the topics that Adali has submitted to the how do you say that, is it the DA? So I forgot the right word for it.
The tuchtcommissie, I guess you mean?
No, the Officier van Justitie.
Oh,
So
what's that called? The
Justice Department.
Yeah, let's just call it the Justice Department, yeah.
So this is one of the topics that he sent and said, okay, there were some wrongdoings here by the board. They didn't explain. There was some, nepotism, as you put it, or that. So this needs to be looked into because they didn't follow the rules of transparency. They didn't go with a tender, and basically the choices were not done in good faith, if you will. So that's what they said on the lighting part. And I didn't want to include because what you see on social media or the other outlets, they say a lot the comparison with the Fenerbahce lighting. It isn't mentioned in this report, and it's very difficult to compare because you don't know what they asked technically, right? Because Beşiktaş has a two-phased approach. So the lighting here and also at the training grounds. So it's difficult to make the comparison. People say, okay, well, it's the same lighting system, the same company, etc., etc. So why is Fenerbahce much cheaper? But I don't know what kind of options they had, so it's difficult to make that comparison.
Exactly. You can buy, for example, if you know a little bit about televisions, you can buy a new Samsung S90 OLED TV, or you can buy an S95 they're similar, but the S95 is significantly more expensive because it has more options, more luxury. It's more luxuriously, like the finish on it, like, there's just some, it's very similar, and the quality of the image is probably the same, but there's like more bells and whistles on the S95 than there is on the S90. So to say, okay, Fenerbahce paid 700,000 for a similar installation, that's a little bit hazy as well. Of course, if you pay 2.5 million and they pay 700,000 for a similar installation, you can probably say, okay, we paid 1.2 million because our installation is fancier. Fenerbahce got last year's model, so to speak. They don't have all the bells and whistles, but I don't think you can justify a discrepancy of 1.8 million euros, right? That's a little difficult to justify, but without the specifics, it's also difficult to really go into depth on that.
Yeah, so I think it's good that they didn't put that in the report because they don't have the facts. So they tried to stay factual. They looked at the quotes that were received, and they see that discrepancy. That alone is enough to question, right? Why didn't you go for this option, and why did you go for that option? And it could be that technically they're different, but that isn't mentioned or that it wasn't conveyed in this report. So it really depends on the answer the previous board will give or will have to give to this.
Mm-hmm.
So more tenders, or you want to move? So we have the fields and we have the membrane, the roof. Membrane replacement.
Very interesting. Yeah, let's get into that one.
The membrane. Okay.
I'm already. Ik voel de bui al hangen, as they say. I have the impression it's going to be a lot of the same, isn't it?
Well, there's less of a known company. That it wasn't mentioned in the report, and I also couldn't find. I also googled a little bit to see if there are any familiar names, but that wasn't the case. So what happened, for those who don't know, is the membrane of the roof, which is the roof is not a hard material, but it's a membrane material that was replaced during this season because there were holes in it. It deteriorated quickly since 2016. So they felt the necessity to change the membrane. And what's interesting is that Ahmet Nurçebi already had initiated the tender, but he stopped because of the whole election ordeal, etc. On top of it, there were already some replacements done or renovations done, so on certain panels. And what's interesting there is that those panels were made of different material. So the new material is PVC, and it was already proven that material, the seagulls couldn't make holes in it. So the Beşiktaş Stadium, the membrane is sort of attacked by seagulls. It's close to the Bosporus Strait, so a lot of seagulls, and they sort of ruin the roof because they make holes in it and things like that. But the PVC, they can't puncture it apparently. Okay. So it was already proven that PVC is the right material because for a couple of past years, the few panels that were already swapped out, they were still good without any punctures.
Okay.
And Ahmet Nurçebi did not complete the tender because there was uncertainty about the stadium sponsor. So they wanted to await that the stadium sponsor, the contract was signed before they sort of complete the replacement, because then you need to print the name, etc. On the membrane. So again, no tender. There were quotes asked, so they didn't continue the previous tender. And there were two companies. One company from the UK for 950k euros, and one Turkish company, Tensaform, for 1,195,000, and who got the contract. So there's 245k difference. And what's interesting here is that procedures were not followed. The opinion of the architect was not asked or taken into account. If you remember, there was I think the architect did sort of a video or a bit where he said, well, nothing can be changed without my consent. Things can be replaced. But so I remember that part a bit. And then again, Kaan Şakul and Çağlayan Tugal explained their choice. They said, well, not many companies that can perform the work and participate, so that's why we did not go for a tender. Because if it's just two companies that can do the work, then there's not too much to hold a tender for. And the reason why we went for the more expensive contract is that they gave a 25-year stepped guarantee against seagull damage.
Okay.
Because the original roof, it didn't even last 10 years, right? Because that stadium was delivered in 2016, and we were already replacing the whole roof in 2024. So it sort of makes sense somewhere.
Yeah. Well, it depends on what did the other company offer in terms of guarantee. Did they mention that?
Yeah, there is a guarantee, but not to this extent. So not for 25 years.
Yeah.
But then the audit committee rightfully says so. Well, if PVC was already proven to be the right material, why do you need a 25-year guarantee? Because both companies are offered to use PVC. And on top of that is 25 years long period. Does that then also mean that you're not going to change anything about the stadium for the coming 25 years? It seems like an exaggerated time period to not do anything with that stadium. So do you really need the 25 years, or could you have chosen the cheaper one instead of the more expensive one? Because maybe the guarantee sounds nice, but you're not going to use that for that long.
Yeah, probably not. And it's also, again, a little fishy that they happen to go with the Turkish company, which, that just opens you up to assumptions that there's gonna be some connection with somebody's, uncle's company or something like that, right?
Yeah, that could be. So there was no mention of it, like the lighting, but it could well be. It's really weird because here you can see a comparison of the material. There might be very technical differences, but the material in its the fundamentals seem to be the same, but just the price per unit is just substantially different. Mm-hmm. So again, the question arises here: is it worth to have such a long guarantee against such a higher price? Was that really necessary? Yes or no? Yeah. So that was about.
Is that all the tenders? Or
no.
there are other tenders?
No,
there
you
was a
also
field
have
tender as well, right? Yeah, let's finish off the tenders. I think that's the last one, right?
Yeah, that's the last one of the of the work that basically the Hasan Arat side did, or the board did. Well, the fields, it's interesting because the personnel asked specifically for a tender. They said, okay, in 2024 there were some concerts. The field is bad; it needs to be replaced. That was already sort of something that Hasan Arat mentioned. He said, okay, a concert was given, and now we have to replace the field. This was not good management, etc., etc. Mm-hmm. And the personnel asked, okay, we need to go for a tender process, and that was denied. So there were two bids, and there was one party that got the contract, of course, for the stadium and the training grounds. So the replacement of the stadium field and the training ground field for 516k euros plus 662 for hybrid assembly. If you remember the pictures from the summer, there were these machines with the hybrid. How to say that?
Hybrid
stitching
sim.
stitching
the hybrid
the patches together.
Yeah. Because it's normal. It's a sort of a plastic material that is then stitched together with the roots, I think, of actual grass or something like that to keep it sturdier. There's a question, by the way, from Sebastian Heinaf. He asks, what I would be curious about is what the preventative measures the club can put in place for each category of financial mishandling.
Yeah. Well, the audit board, they make recommendations, and they have been making recommendations for years. So this person, the chair of the audit board, is there for already many years, and he has already.
Yaman? That's not Yaman Turk, right? Is it, or is it?
No, sorry. No, I have the name. Sorry, it's
It's
Gökhan Tiryaki.
okay.
And so they made already recommendations for many years, and they also had been quite into a discussion with Ahmed Nurchevi. So it starts with the bylaws of the club, right?
Yeah.
They are not uplifted by, and they're also not how to say that, governed correctly, also by these institutions. So the supervisory board, the audit board, they're basically without power. If you read these reports, they basically, so they advise, but nothing happens. There's no follow-up, and they cannot ensure that the board lives up to these to this. So the governance, I would say, is very bad at Beşiktaş. Even though the rules might be there should be stronger governance, and these type of boards should be empowered to also block things, or to really uphold boards on good management. And on top of that, I think if you look at these standards, there needs to be a good procurement process, and there is a sort of procurement process, but again, it's not professional enough, and that's why I think they felt the freedom to do it like this, right? And I don't want to say, so you can go into conspiracy mode and say it was all bad faith, etc. But even regardless of bad faith or conspiracy, there is no really good sound procurement process.
I mean, if you don't follow the rules or the guidelines, then you're putting yourself open to these conspiracy theories, because, I mean, you're it's your own fault, really, because you're giving it room to breed. So,
Yeah, it's open for abuse. That's also what they said, right? So you're not transparent enough because you don't do tenders, you don't announce on the website, etc. So even if you're good intended, you make it to do it like this, you make it open for abuse. So even if it's not bad faith. So to answer the question, Sebastian, it starts with governance. There needs to be, so the bylaws need to be changed. There needs to be a better governance structure, like a real public company with a supervisory board which has more power than that they've done. I think the heads would need to change. I think of the current supervisory board, I think that guy really underperformed for many years now. The CEO, right, who's responsible for the operational side of the club, and not the head of the board of directors. And then a good procurement process. This needs to be solidified so that regardless of whatever board comes to power, they adhere to the same rules, right? And now everybody does whatever they seem fit.
And because nobody is ever held accountable, because this type of mismanagement has been happening at the club for over 2 decades, and there's never any there's never any consequences to this. So
absolutely right. That's absolutely. So it's like a play. How do you say that? It's like a playing field, right? You can do whatever you like because nobody stops you.
There's rules, but nobody's going to enforce them. So why would you follow them, right?
Yeah, and obviously from a point of we think that we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, hopefully. Right? That's the hope that we have, but we have learned from the past that very often people get into these positions and they are definitely there to benefit, to say the least. But let's get back to the hibretçim, to the grass, the pitch. So any odd things there?
So the one that they gave the contract to, which was interesting, is they had issues already with the supplier. So they supplied before the pitch, but they had already issues with them. So they damaged the training field. There were defects and deficiencies in the previous works that they've done. So personnel was okay. You also didn't do a tender. You selected a party that already did not have good experience with. And then again, they were not the cheapest one. So why did we go with this party if we have bad experience with them?
Any connections there that you could fined?
No, but again, I think it's no. There wasn't any mention of a connection or a name.
And any justification, any explanation offered by Khan
No.
Shakulenko?
No, because if you remember, like I think it was this month ago, we had to go for one game to the Olympic Stadium because they had to replace the field again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the cup game. Yeah.
So we changed it in the summer,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't even last 6 months.
Yeah, that's pathetic. And how much did we pay for it?
So it was 516 plus 662. So in total, almost 20 million tele, Turkish liras.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's more than $1 million in euros. Yeah.
Yeah.
For both for the training grounds and the stadium.
I mean, that's more than 20 million lira then, isn't it? Because I think $1 million is like 38.
Oh, sorry. No, you're right. No, it's 516 is the 20 million. Yeah, you're right. Yeah. You're right. Now it comes up to 40. Yeah, you're right.
So it's more. It's like 1.1 million euros for a pitch that we used for 6 months, or not even, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was this whole ordeal about you should not give concert because it cost us a lot of money. Yeah, and then you replace it and you cannot even use it 6 months without the concert on.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. All right, so on to another subject, I guess.
Yeah. So what do we have left on our menu? It's IT, membership, or finance.
Well, I think finance is the best, so let's keep that for last, right?
Okay.
Let's see, IT. I know there's a lot of stuff happening there. A lot of people lost their jobs, I believe, in the IT department. There were a lot of issues that I know with the servers. I believe the contracts weren't getting paid. Can you confirm all of this?
Well, you're spot on. And I think you had also some inside information. So it's also interesting to see that was actually confirmed by the by the audit group.
Ridiculous, right? You have to think, so they're not paying the servers that Kartal Juvasi and so on are hosted on, so the websites were offline for X amount of days. So you are missing, and this was like in a period when there was, I think the retro shirts were getting released and stuff like that. So like a busy period for financially, and they just allowed the websites to be offline for like 5 or so days. Like how much money did the club miss out because they didn't pay a bill? I can't imagine the bills for the internet hosting is that high. I mean, maybe you can see it in the report.
That's not mentioned, but what they said that from October to November 2024, the IT system was completely disrupted.
Mm-hmm.
So there was no access to emails for a month.
Yeah.
Imagine you're a public company, you're a club. Like you said, orders, etc. It's ongoing business, and you don't have any access for a month.
Yeah.
And to date, still some accounts are inaccessible.
Yeah.
They're still having issues.
Yeah.
And they say, well, it's technical malfunction, old servers and old hosting platforms, and the restoration took 2 months.
Yeah.
That restoring getting online again, and they're still not fully back on it again. And what's also interesting, because you said layoffs, the director of IT, so the CTO, we had 6 CTOs in the past 3 years. So imagine replacing the head of IT like 6 times in the past.
I mean,
years.
I wonder why they replace him. Maybe the guy just quits because they're not paying the bills, and he's like, I can't work under these conditions. It must be something like that, I think. How else can you explain a turnover like that?
But it's crazy, right? It's not normal. It's absolutely not normal to change that many times. And then what's even more interesting is that in February, so I think it was the 6th of Feb, the IT system was hacked, infiltrated from outside/inside the club, deleting some files, and they were very specific on this, deleting some files with a PDF extension. And these files were created since the beginning of 2024. All the backups were deleted, including the logs. So who logged in, etc. All the logs were deleted, and specifically audit board files were deleted.
Wow.
And this was done 20 days ago.
Yeah. Wow. That, I mean, you gotta get the tinfoil hat out right now, because that's some obvious covering up, right?
I leave that up to you. Yeah,
I mean, that's some really obvious covering up of wrongdoing right there. Wow, that's just ridiculous. That's like some KGB level shit, man. Like Russia hacking our servers.
Yeah, it's really concerning, and I'm laughing, but I'm crying inside.
Yeah.
This is actionable, right? This is open for criminal investigation because
Yeah.
I don't know if it was outside. If it was an outside job, then okay, I can imagine
but why would they
our
do
security
that,
is
right?
not.
What would the motivation be? It has to be I mean, obviously not an inside job anymore because the board changed, but it has to be, affiliated to whether it's Ahmet Nurçebi or it's Hasan Arat. Probably, Hasan Arat, I imagine. Because Khan Shakul's explanations aren't holding up to me so far. I mean, but that's pure speculation, of course. But I mean, there has to be an investigation and a criminal investigation for something like that, But
And it's also interesting that sort of the backup. So what's clear, I think, that Serdal Adali came in 40 days ago, and he didn't ask for a backup of all the systems and put that in a vault or something, or sort of safe. He didn't keep it safe. So that's also a little bit. Yeah, I think it's strange. I don't know what the documents, they were created in the beginning of 2024, right around the time. I think then Hasan Arat was just there for a month.
Yeah.
Had it to do with the previous period?
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
Maybe.
So like you said, you can get the tinfoil hat on because there are a lot of conspiracies you can.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what the procedure would be when a new president comes in, that they like back up those types of files and put them in the vault. I don't know if that's like high on their priority list.
I guess not.
You could, there's definitely, I wouldn't, plausible deniability makes it sound like there's guilt there. So I don't want to throw shade on Adali. I think in that regard, I think that's maybe just a little bit of naivete, or even, naivete. I mean, who would expect something like that? Honestly, that's like I said, that's some Mission Impossible, Tom Cruise coming down from the roof on a string kind of stuff, man. Like,
yeah, I don't know if you remember, Hasan Arat said in his in one of the General Assembly meetings, he said that he had to also hack some passwords to get into some servers from the previous board. So from the Anch time. So he didn't give openness. He didn't give the passwords, and he said, okay, we had to sort of hack into it to get all the relevant information of our club.
Yeah.
So it seems also like each board is trying to make it. The new board's life very difficult.
Yeah, or cover up their tracks, or that's just.
Yeah, but it's crazy if you look at it from outside and you read these things. This is unheard of. I've never seen things like this, especially for, again, okay, we're not a real public company, but like some sort of a professional organization.
Yeah.
This is absolutely unheard of.
Yeah.
And a huge problem.
It is, for sure.
So they need to, and I don't think it was ever mentioned, but this needs to become high on the priority list of Adali to sort of update this system or replace the whole IT infrastructure, which is also going to cost some serious money. So I wonder if this will get on that priority list or not.
Is there any mention at all about the expenses of the IT department or anything like that?
No,
Okay.
not specifically. So maybe there is, but not specifically to this or to this problem. So what they do mention is that the high turnover in personnel and what that cost and sort of the number of people, but not specifically to the IT department, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next subject.
Membership, then.
Yeah, let's go to the membership. That's something that's been talked about a lot as well over the last couple of years. The supposed ghost accounts opened by Ahmed Nourchebi that Hassan Aratem put a stop to, and now I think they opened it up again. So let's talk about that. Yeah, the membership should be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting. I think it's even more interesting than the whole finance part. So let's start with the new members. In 2023, 10,325 new members came in, which were reviewed. So the audit group, they focused on 2023 memberships.
Okay.
And this is also a bit of a funny fact. There's no audit of the 2024 membership due to other priorities. So they can't fit it in their priority list. So they haven't, and it seems that they will not review the 2024 memberships. That's what they've stated.
Okay.
And then they spent 5,000 hours on reviewing these 10,325 memberships for compliance. So that means that 625 working days to just go through every membership application and to review it. So that should give you a sense of how archaic the system at Beşiktaş is.
And what were the findings? Were there any dead people that were dead since 1985 or something?
Well, listen to this. So 56% of the members were made member in violation of the bylaws or are suspicious accounts.
Okay.
So 5,553 people, they're marked sort of suspicious memberships, of which 3,743 without a reference, 305 members cited a deceased person as reference.
And just to put this into context, Ural, for the people watching. So if you want to become a Congress member of Beşiktaş, I believe you need to have 2 references. So that means you need to have 2 Congress members that have, I believe, already been a Congress member for 5 years. I might be wrong on that. To vouch, they have to vouch for you. Otherwise, you cannot become a Congress member. So if Ural, myself, you want to become a Congress member of Beşiktaş, you need to have 2 Congress members vouching for you in order to be able to get accepted.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. So these people in their application cited a deceased person as their reference.
Yeah.
223 did not have a signature on their application form. 125 with invalid references, so they weren't members for at least 5 years. So they were member, but they were not. So they could not act as a reference, as you just explained.
Yeah, they were just a fake. They were probably an invalid member from the year before who just played as the reference, huh?
You never know. But and then 702. No, it was actually. So there's a mistake in the report. So at the one hand they say 702 people, but later on in the report it says 900. But let's stick with the 900. So 900 exceeded the max reference limit of 10. So one reference became a reference for more than 10 people, which is also not allowed under the bylaws. And then 455 had suspicious signatures. So I think maybe the signature does not resemble the one on their ID card or something like that.
Probably a PDF of Samet Aybaba's signature.
Something like that. So they said that was a problem. And then the nicest one about this, where did I wrote it down? There was one person. One reference vouched for 36 people.
Wow. And who was that? Who was that? Was that
no names mentioned?
Oh, okay. They should name and shame these people, man. Come on.
Yeah, they should kick him out. They should say, "Well, you misused our rules. Yeah. You cannot vouch, or you cannot be a reference for 36 people in one application period, right?"
Yeah. In 1 year, that's like trying to recruit an army.
Yeah. So it's interesting, and well, to be fair, again, you can do sort of a conspiracy on it, but what's evident is that the process is not. It's very old school, archaic. It's not sufficient, right? The whole application process.
What I find interesting though about it, I mean, I think this kind of proves the conspiracy theory that Ahmed Nouchebi was trying to buy the presidency. But then what I don't quite understand is how he managed to not win it. Is that just another example of he miscalculated? And I mean, how do you fumble that then? If you still have like 5,000, he didn't get 5,000 votes. So,
no,
yeah.
No, you're right. And then also, if you look at sort of time period, because you can only vote if you're a member for at least a year. Did he pave a way for maybe Serdal Adali having a conspiracy?
Now that's an interesting one. Yeah, Serdal Adali did win with a record amount of votes. You're right. That is interesting.
So, yeah, he lost, of course, against Hassan Arat, but. Yeah. I don't know. It was you can go both ways.
Yeah, that's I hadn't even thought of that one. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah.
So, audit board says there's they stated there's an uncontrolled increase in the number of members in the last 2 years, and they basically say that the boards, I should say, did not want to make changes to the system, which then, and this is an accusation made by the audit board, which then gives rise to suspicion that the boards want to intervene, which is easier with a manual process rather than a fully digitalized and process with checks and balances. So they say that there's a deliberate unwillingness to update the system so that they have ease of intervening in the whole membership and basically voting process, which is basically fraud, right? It's voting fraud. It's a big accusation in my view. Yeah. And then they also said, okay, how were memberships paid? 1,813 people paid in cash. Okay, 1,718 people paid by offsetting their current account. So there was sort of a debt from Beşiktaş. I don't know how that worked, but it was an interesting remark. And then bank transfer, credit card. 6 were free of charge. So I don't know how that works. Huh? I didn't know that we gave away free memberships.
Yeah, I wonder how that works. Yeah, maybe that was like honorary memberships to like politicians or something.
Could be. And then 58 without even a membership fee, so they were not charged a membership fee. And then this is also an interesting part, and it's the last bit of this. 1,419 members paid in one day, which is 188k euros in cash flow, and the club also issued their receipts. So, and they say, the audit report says, well, this is operationally impossible, and they find this a huge irregularity. And I don't know, they also don't explain it, but I thought maybe a letter was sent out that they had to pay, and then a lot of people paid. If you send out a letter to 5,000 people or 10,000 people that you have to pay your membership fee, yeah, I'm sure that 1,400 or 1,500 people will pay it. But they find this. They make it seem like as if one person, it was orchestrated, and that these 1,400 people were sort of made member and paid, etc., all at once. That's what they imply basically in their report. Okay. So I don't know how you see that or weigh that, but yeah, it was interesting work.
I think there's a lot of rotten fish smelling up the place right now.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else on the membership front?
No. This was it. And like I said, they're not going to do for now. They're not going to do an audit of the 2024 memberships, and I understand why. Because if you spend 5,000 hours, so 625 working days.
Yeah. It's understandable. Crazy. They only just finished the last one the day before the audit came out, probably.
Exactly.
All right.
It's,
Yeah. What were the remaining subjects then?
So the finance and operations, and then I think we can finish off with the general remarks. I think the sort of the conclusion of the audit report.
All right.
So let's dive into the finances, and there can be a lot can be said about it, and I don't want to sort of bore everyone with the numbers and sort of go really into that, but I try to give sort of the highlights. So in 2023, the interest cost, so the amount of interest that we would need to pay back then was 8 million, and this has risen euros, and this has risen to 39 million euros, obviously due to the interest rate, and we are not paying any principals. This was back then stated in the financial reports, but the actual increase is 52 million. Even higher, 70.6 million is what they expect now. So even their forecast, and that's why I raised this point, even their forecast was way off, so to say.
The forecast was 50, right? And now it's 70 then, or what?
Yep. Okay. Yeah. And the forecast before that was 39 million. Imagine.
And what's the main reason for the increase?
So this is interest cost. So this is the interest rate. The interest rate that's applied. So the central bank's interest rate, which was for a large part of 2024 50%.
Yeah.
So and then interest on interest, I assume. So I don't think much repayment was done, or payment of interest was even done. So that gave a substantial increase in the interest that need to be paid, because also the total debt has increased by 163 million.
Yeah.
So it's an increase of 72%. So we now have a total debt of 390 million euros.
And to put that into context, our annual income last season for the fiscal year was $94 million. So now we are set to pay 70 million euros, which is, let's say, $78 million maybe, give or take, in interest alone. So what is that? That's 85% of our total income in a year is going to interest rates.
Yeah. Well, and actually from period to period, because you're comparing, of course, the annual numbers, and this is from, let's say, 30th of November 23 until 30 November 24. Yeah. The revenues then over that period is 83 million euros.
Euros? Okay,
yeah. And we had a total expenses of 85 million. So there was a loss of 2 million over that period, which is a decrease if you compare it to the previous period. But you see here that the expenses exceed our revenues, let alone to making repayments or more repayments on debt, and etc. etc. So our banking debt has increased to 125 million. So there's a 35 million increase. So that tells me that we haven't been able to pay them whatever we agreed. So it continues to increase. I think that's the issue. That's a huge issue, huge risk there. So 39% of the total revenue over that period went to interest expenses. That's what they're stating. And there's a cash deficit, and this is an interesting one, of 63 million. And that's something I want to touch upon. So just remember this cash deficit of 63 million, and I will come back to it later after I've run through it, because I want to tie this to the reason why Hassan Arat might have left. So what they're saying, and this is also a bit colored, I think they say that these numbers were all mentioned in the last financial assembly, and there was a lot of optimism, or it was received in cheers, in celebration almost. And the audit board makes a remark saying, how could this have been sort of celebrated while, well, it's a very dire financial situation. So they questioned that a bit, especially given the rise in the debt. They also mentioned that that high liabilities were incurred in the football branch, referring basically to the contracts, I think, of Giro and the likes of Rafa. And then the cash deficit of 63 million was, of course, at the level that the player wages could not be paid. If you remember the period, what was it, September, October last year, there were rumors that players were not paid, but basically they confirmed that they were indeed not paid. And then the monthly wage budget, season comparison, 23-24 was 3 to 3.5 million. This season, it's 7.5 million in wage budget a month.
Yeah. So let's have a look at 7.5 million.
Yeah.
So our total wage budget. What? So our total wage budget right now is 90 million
Over
12 months.
Over 12 months. Yeah, that's what they're stating.
That's ridiculous. How is that even possible?
That's not only players.
Okay, but still, like that's.
It's a lot.
That's staff and like the cooks and the cleaners and stuff like that, and maybe the stadium personnel but would that also include, like, for example, people that work at Kartal Juvasi that isn't owned, that isn't franchised? Okay.
Yeah, and for sure, and also the amateur branch. Well, not amateur, but so basketball, volleyball, everyone included. All players.
Okay. It's not just the football branch.
No.
This is the entire club. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's see. So it went from 3.5 million a month
to 7.5.
So from 42 million to 90 million. So it more than doubled.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. And then there was a loss in the amateur branches, which was 3 to 4 million to 15, 16 million.
Yeah.
So there's also a huge increase in.
So it looks like a lot of this increase has to do with the amateur branches, not just the football branch necessarily.
No, yeah, I think you're right. If you look at the numbers, for sure.
Yeah.
And
is there any explanation to that? Like, did they invest heavily in the basketball team or in the
That wasn't given. No, there wasn't. I don't think there was a single. So the what they say the most is that, like I said, the high liabilities incurred in the football branch. That's the biggest reference that they make. So that's why I think there's also there's a bit of a political color in this audit report. To be fair, because it doesn't explain the loss in the amateur branches. Well, the independent auditors, they've already stated there are serious doubts about the continuity of the club. They also mention a little bit about the banking debt, which I found interesting because they agreed a first principal payment in August 2023, and it ends in May 2030. So that's the idea. So the banking debt, based on the contract that we have with the banking union, is that it needs to be fully repaid by May 2030.
2030.
So if you then think about the plans of Adali and his real estate project, that would yield sort of, he said optimistically 1.5 years from now, 1.5 years, but it could also take up until 3 years. If you imagine that we then only have the money to repay the banking debt in full, we're almost, it's 2028 by then. It's just 2 years left on the banking debt. So again, it shows that our financial planning is all over the place, and it's a huge issue because interest will continue to accumulate. There will be a separate report on the football contracts. So they will look into how was, let's say, Giro contracted, how was Rafa contracted. There will be a separate report, as well as on consulting and real estate. So there will be a separate report on all of the real estate subjects. And they also make a clear statement that this whole debt increase, it's not only caused by Hassan Arat. But they say it's questionable why they took on more debt and liabilities. And this was a question from me. Well, this is a question to you. How do you feel about this? So, from a financial perspective, you can understand that. Why would you accumulate more debt and liabilities if you're such in a financial problem? On the other hand, you also need to perform and have a competing team.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you cannot make those revenues. Europa League Champions, whatever. So how do you feel about that decision that they went and basically incurred more debt and liabilities?
Well, I mean, you kind of answered the question yourself a little bit already there. Like it's a case of no, it's no problem, but it's a case of you have to balance it, because if you're going to completely tighten the belt and not spend any money, then you're going to fall way behind. And I don't mean falling way behind in the sense of 40 points behind the champions. I mean way behind in the sense of not qualifying for Europe, for example, because let's not forget, it was by the skin of our teeth last season by winning the cup. Not qualifying for Europe makes a significant difference. That makes a difference of at least 10 million euros. On the other hand, I mean, if you're going to spend significantly more than 10 million euros to justify that, then the problem is stagnating in sports, and I think you always have to be trying to move forward. And football in general, competitive sports in general, is in part based on incurring debt, I believe. Obviously, it is about keeping a healthy balance. I do think that you need to keep investing. You can't stand still, but you have to be really smart about your investments. If you don't have a sugar daddy like Ali Koch or illegal betting companies fueling you with money like Galatasaray or clerics from Pennsylvania, somehow inserting money in your club constantly. Who is, obviously he died, but I'm sure he still has other people taking care of that dirty business, as we recently found out with their kebab sponsorship that has ties to Pennsylvania. So there's clearly a big connection there. So when you don't have those things, I think you need to be very smart with your money. And then it is very difficult to justify extravagant spending. Spending like Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, spending like Ciro Immobile, even spending like Rafa Silva, even though you know my opinion on Rafa Silva, I think he is somebody worth making an exception for. But I think for Beşiktaş it's very important that sometimes you'll have to make an exception, but they need to be very rare. We can't afford to have 7-8 players on 4.5 million a year like Galatasaray do. They have, and 4.5 million is putting it lightly. I think they're starting 11, like 8 players are more making 4 million or more, and a bunch of them are making a lot more than that. Icardi making 10 million, Osimhen making 10 million. Fenerbahce is the same. Almost all their players are really big earners. So yeah, Beşiktaş cannot compete with that, but we need to spend our money more wisely, and we need to adopt, I think, like I've preached it before, but I think a similar system to Club Brugge, where you go and you invest in scouting, you invest in attracting young talent, not just because their contracts are cheaper, but also because you can then hone them, develop them, flip them. So we just have to be a lot smarter. Our transfer politics need to be completely different than our rivals. And we need to adopt a more modern European approach that a lot of clubs that are being successful and who have continuity. If you look at clubs like Ajax, PSV, Dortmund, clubs who do have these types of ways they run their clubs. Okay, they will have an off season here and there, and they might not win the league every year, but they do have continuity because they are self-sustainable. That is what we ultimately need to get to, right? But, Nasser asks the question here, Ural, and I'm going to ask this one to you. How does Beşiktaş come out of the financial mess they're in and reduce down the debt? And do you think Serdal Adali can fix that problem? So how does Beşiktaş go about this now? Almost 400 million euros in debt already. The club is hemorrhaging money. And like I just said, I don't think you can afford to stand still. Yes, you have to cut expenses. You have to, reduce what you're spending, but you still need to spend, because otherwise you're going to get even further and further behind. And that, in the long run, I think is only going to damage you more.
Yeah. Yeah. So I agree with you. You can't, like they did in this audit report, you can't blame the board that they try to invest and acquire players to make something out of the season. That it didn't work out, etc. That's a different discussion. But I don't think you can't go about it without investments. But
you can scrutinize the individual signings and say, okay, this was a bad decision. This was a bad decision. This was a bad decision. Okay, this was maybe a good decision. You can definitely do that, but I think to generalize it and say, why did you invest? Yeah. Like I said, standing still is stagnating. Is regressing even. It's moving back.
Yeah. So I fully agree with what you said there, and I think that's part of the business. You cannot only focus on the financial side. You need to increase revenue, and you need to look into those possibilities, and that's part of the answer to it. And to be honest, it's a very complicated situation. So the whole club needs to be restructured. As we've gone through these problems, you see on so many levels there are issues. It's not only a financial issue. It's not only an organizational issue. It's not only the performance on the pitch. The whole club needs to go through a complete restructuring, from bylaws to governance to what kind of people you hire, everything. It's not only a football problem; it's the whole organization, and that makes it difficult. You can find a solution for the financial part, but if people do not then adhere to the rules or to the plan, you'll be in trouble there. So I think you need to tackle this from many angles, and this cannot be done. I don't think it can even be done within one term. So let alone in the 6 months that Adali got, and now reading these problems, knowing these problems, I don't even think that. I think that Adali should get should continue his term, so that at least somebody can pick this up. And he might not be the right person. We can debate that, but having a change again with so much impact, and again somebody going through all of this and trying to figure out how to do this, that's going to put the club back, because that's happened time and time again. We've changed so many boards. It's been the how many elections? It's going to be the 4th election in 3 years. Okay.
So I think what we can say is right now Beşiktaş is like a come see, get over here. Beşiktaş is like a dog that is being fed table scraps every day, and it is severely obese. It probably has diabetes. All its organs are surrounded by layers of fat, and in fact, what you need Beşiktaş to become is, where's my dog? Here she is. You see this? You need to see the ribs of the dog.
Yeah.
This is what you need.
Top fit.
Yeah, you need this. This is what you need. Beşiktaş has to trim down, lean down, and it doesn't mean that the quality on the pitch has to dissipate completely. It just means that there's clearly an extreme amount of fat that needs to be trimmed. If the total wage expenditures from the entire club has doubled in a year, or more than doubled in a year, that means that there's being money spent on things that probably they shouldn't be getting spent on, right? And I think, you can start leading that up. I mean, we saw, this is one of the things where Serdal Adali perhaps has an advantage, because he did this supposedly for the Turkish Jockey Association, right? He really trimmed down and made that into a lean, profitable animal. I don't know how many years he took to do that, but Yeah, that is going to be a difficult process, but it is already happening. It is something that is already happening. A lot of people in the IT department have been fired. The scouting department has been completely fired recently. We've talked about this in the past. That, when Ole Gunnar Solskjaer came in, he said there was no scouting department. Actually, there was. Ole was just never introduced to them because Serdal Adali was getting rid of them. And I think Serdal Adali is getting rid of a lot of people on a lot of different levels. And, okay, we don't know these people personally. Maybe they're good people. Maybe they're not. I mean, good people in the sense of, do they contribute to the club? Not in terms of bad people, good people like that, right? So we don't know that, but I think we have to change. We have to trust in Serdal Adali's judgment in that, and his experience in that, and hopefully he can turn the club into a lean animal and prevent the club from dying a slow and agonizing death, where in a couple of years we can't run anymore, and our owner has to pick us up and put us outside to take a shit.
Yeah. Well, I think you made a perfect bridge, because if you look into the HR part of it, there is an increase in the number of people, unqualified and inefficient HR. That's what the audit report says. Experienced and trained people are dismissed, creating the obvious weaknesses, of course. In 2023, we had 765 people on the operational side of things, and in 2024, 873. So 108 people more, 40%. So the bulk of it working administration, 351. They were not hired to conform the HR procedures, and they did not specify what those procedures were and what then happened. So just like Adala hiring his son as the scout type of thing.
Or Jadon Kazanji getting the sporting director job without actually having any qualifications. That's another good example, I think.
Yeah. 215 employees were recruited as of December 2023, 64 in new positions. So these positions were created out of scratch, so they were not existing positions, and 151 in existing positions. So, and on top of that, you have quality and motivation issues because of all the changes and the whole chaos in the club. So HR is a huge problem within the club.
Yeah.
To put it mildly, if you look at these statements. So, and also if you rotate after each election or this turnover, that also doesn't help. So you also lose the sort of the historical mind of the club, all the experience, etc. Yeah, if you change out whole teams, etc., then you're not getting better. So that's also, I think, a huge issue, because every candidate does it. They come in.
On paper, of course. On paper, you're not getting better, but if the people in place aren't doing a good job, then...
Of course.
Yeah. So obviously that's open for interpretation. We don't know whether they are or they aren't. Maybe they don't have the ability to do a good job because of the financial constraints or whatever, or maybe they're not being listened to. Like these audits, like clearly they're being dismissed and on. So
multiple reasons for it. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Nasser is asking if there currently is a chief financial officer. So Kaan Shakul was the chief financial officer for the majority of the period mentioned here, or for the entire period mentioned here, I think.
Yeah.
But he was from the previous board. He is obviously not here anymore. I don't know if there is a specific chief financial officer in the Adali board.
I think we have, wasn't it? Isn't it the Deutsche Bank guy who's now the new? So we got a new banker in, I think, who's now basically the CFO. Yeah. So obviously we have, but that's the interesting thing. Regardless of having a CFO, last time we got an approval for our budget. And a month later, the whole chaos, everything erupted, and it was complete chaos.
Yeah.
So for what it's worth, let me quickly finish the financial part, because there was a couple of interesting things. Debt to board members, an interesting one. 13.7 million, and 95% is owed to a single person.
I wonder who.
Guess who?
I mean, you have to. I mean, I think you kind of have to give the guy props for that, though. Like, he put his money where his mouth was, right? Like,
Definitely. And he put in 30 million. So I think he did what he promised. Only 30.7. He said, well, 1/3 will be left as debt, and the rest I will not ask back. So I think he's done that. To be honest. So there is an increase in assets, but this is mainly due to appreciation of inflation accounting. So yeah, a bit of an accounting trick. UEFA revenue 9 million, and like I said, total revenue was 83 million, which is a 41% increase against cost, which had a 28% increase. So all in all, it's not that bad on that side, but it just doesn't cover our cost. So a player sold, and I wonder if you know which one it was. So there was one player sold for 1.4 million, but this does not cover the loss of that player's contract. But I don't know if you remember who this was, because I couldn't.
who was sold for 1.4 million?
1.46. Yeah, I couldn't remember, but yeah. Apparently, we received 1.46 million euros in the past period. Over this period.
Maybe Muleka?
Yeah, it could be. So I just don't know.
Maybe I don't know. But
Yeah.
I mean, he was an obligation to buy if they stay up, and they haven't guaranteed that yet. Although they are 10 points or 9 points ahead of the relegation zone, I think. So I don't know. Who could it be? 1.46 million.
There was no name mentioned. And then the last thing I think you will find this interesting. A profit of 48 Turkish lira was obtained from every 100 tele product sold. So we have a gross profit margin of 48%, which I think on merch is not bad.
That's not
It's
bad.
good.
No. Usually, I mean, in the clothing sector, I think 50% is maybe. Oh, am I wrong? I'm not sure.
No, I think you're right.
I think 50% is like the standard. I think so.
Yeah, so I think that's positive on that side. And now a list I think you'll really love. So some outstanding debt. This was not due to Hassan Arat. So that's why I find it interesting to mention, because everything focuses on Hassan Arat. Legal proceedings. So we haven't paid the debt, and these parties are claiming this from Beşiktaş, and they went to court to claim this money. And I don't know why we are rebuting these cases.
Are these still like Tyler Boyd and stuff, or is it
No.
new? This is new.
Yeah, so 300K to the manager of Ox.
Okay.
5% legal interest since 2023. So it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Accumulating interest of 5%.
Oh, great. Yeah.
240K to the agent of Rasica. 5% also since 2023.
Yeah.
140K to the agent of Zaidutinov. 5% also legal interest. 180K to the agent of Roman Sais.
Still? Wow.
They appealed, so they paid part of it, but they paid 72K, and they appealed the 108K part of it.
Okay.
Then, which is I really laughed hard about this one, 182K to the AD Tourism, which was the 2022 camp in Austria, so the hotel.
That didn't have a gym. That one?
No. This was 2022.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
So we have an outstanding invoice from our camp in Austria from 2022, 182K and 100K. So we paid 100 euro less. I don't know why. And then I think there was still some complaint about it, and the procedure is still ongoing, the enforcement procedure. I'm sorry, exactly.
Wait.
So it's crazy. So we went into a legal proceeding. Yeah, I'm explaining
400 euros, or am I?
No.
Oh,
there
okay.
was something went wrong. So even despite the fact that we paid, the process is still ongoing, because the enforcement court said there's a complaint in this case, and we need to go through this whole complaint. So even now that you've paid, I don't know, like 3 years later, we cannot close the case. But I found it very laughable that we had an outstanding invoice of 182K for a camp in 2022.
That's depressing. Eh? Imagine you're the hotel owner, and I mean, 100 and something thousand euros is probably a lot of money for those people.
And then the sports services department, which is a government agency, non-payment of 2011, 2012, 2013, 10% revenue share of in and outside stadium advertising.
What? Can you repeat that? Sorry. 2011, yes. 12, and 13?
Yeah. 10% revenue share of in and outside stadium advertising.
And for what is that exactly?
So we should pay that agency, and this is a government government body or a government agency. We should pay them 10% of the revenue, of the advertising revenue in those years. That was a contract apparently. Okay. So I don't know who was the board then.
2011 and 12 was Yildirim Demirel, 2013 Fikret Orman.
Yeah, so great. They didn't, and that case is still ongoing.
Wow.
And then on top of it, that agency also had a contract, 5% of the revenue of our jerseys sold in 2012.
Okay. Wow.
Also still not paid. And then there's one case, this was a bit of tragic, but there's a traffic accident made with a Beşiktaş vehicle, so to say, by an employee in the 2020, and there was 166K damages claimed, and also that process is still ongoing, which I found.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a bit shameful, but
yeah.
So add this up to the debt.
To Ahmet Nur Çebi's tally. Well, not all of it, obviously, because the stuff from 2011, 12 and stuff, like, obviously not, but like, yeah, the Rasicka, Ox, Saiz, their agents not being paid, that's all Ahmet Nur Çebi. Dynamic.
But what could it be? So you sign a contract, obviously the agent gets paid something. Why is there so much discussion, legal proceedings? So why did the club find it worthwhile to fight this in court? Because
legally an agent is only allowed to make, I believe, I don't remember what it is, but let's say it's 10%, but very often they make a lot more than that. And I guess maybe the club then thinks, well, it exceeds the 10%, so we can maybe win the fact that, or I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Yeah, but it's not a good. I don't think it's a good list or to have this type of.
No, of course not. I mean, let's say that. I mean, Rasicka. Let's say he's playing great, and we want to renegotiate his contract. We want to extend it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be difficult to negotiate with that agent, right? Like, yeah. You owe him money.
Business.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And you don't know, like, these agents, like, who else are their clients? If we have a player in the future that we want to sign and he is also managed by that agent, it's going to make things more difficult, you know? So there's no benefit really to making enemies in that world. I mean, you don't have to be paying them ridiculous amounts of money like we did with Jorge Mendes, but you do at the same time. I mean, if you sign a contract, you have to pay it. Simple as that. That's,
I don't know why this is so much debate and discussion on, and I think, the club should not sort of drag this on, because this just adds up to
exactly. Every year 5%. It if you have a multitude of these cases, and every year it adds up. So at the end of the day, you're just paying more and more money, and you're just passing the buck down the road. And that's probably that's the big part of the reason why the club is in the state it's in, because essentially every board puts stuff like this on the long road and makes it somebody else's problem, because they know, well, in 3 years I'll probably not be here, or maybe in 6 years or whatever, but like I
think that's so let me tie this. Remember the 63 million cash deficit. So the audit board says the reason for the crisis was this cash deficit. which peaked after the General Assembly when the whole financial planning was agreed.
Yeah.
And this deficit led to the non-payment of the wages and basically led to the management crisis. And this came together with the sickness of Hassan Arad. I believe that he was sick, but I think the main reason was this, because that 63 million deficit, that cash deficit, that peaked at that time when the whole thing exploded with Samad Aybaba is firing him, then being sick and having to deal with this. And then Hassan Arad said that there was sort of a coup against him, or they worked against him. So my theory is that he couldn't get that money, or there was a financial problem he could not solve, and maybe there was some internal wrongdoings to sort of frustrate his presidency, and then he could not tie it, so he could not get the money, and then thought, you know what, I'm also sick, I cannot solve this financially, I'm gonna bail and leave it to Hüseyin Yücel, because I think that Hüseyin Yücel also said, you know what, no more money from me if this is going to be the way you manage things. So he also cut down the, how do you say that, stop the cash,
the faucets,
the faucet indeed.
Imagine if you're like, let's say that wealth is sand, and you have a big pile of sand, and like you're managing a road or something, and you're like the third guy in command or whatever, or the second guy in command, and the guy who's supposed to run things, like, he keeps like asking you to fill up potholes with your sand, with your personal sand. That's your sand, right? After you filled 3, 4, 5 potholes, you're gonna say, hey, I've had enough of this. This is my sand.
Yeah, of course.
You get no
Where's
more.
your sand?
You're getting no more of my sand, man. Get your own sand,
Yeah.
right? And now you're asking me to fill out like a massive pothole, and you want to put all my sand in there. No, I'm not giving you my sand. Fuck you. It's my sand.
Yeah.
Right.
And then, so I think then he thought, okay, I cannot leave it to the supervisory board, which I think was again a right decision, because if that would have happened, imagine not paying wages for 2 months, then putting the supervisory board in charge, that they would have called for elections, but that would take at least a month. Then I think the bank of the club would have filed for bankruptcy, because they would not be able to bridge that gap or pay any wages. So I think that was the main reason to say, you know what, I'll wait a couple of days and then hand it over to Hüseyin Yücel, who became the sort of the interim president, so to say. So then at least he knew, or maybe together with Hüseyin Yücel, he knew that, okay, I'll pay the wages, we can continue, and then it was up to Hüseyin Yücel to decide on elections, yes or no. So I think that Hassan Arad was really, he put himself into a corner, let me put it that way, because I think he's to blame for the situation he created himself. Yeah. I think he's responsible for it. He's sort of the end responsible for it. But I think this debt deficit, which peaked at that time, was the main trigger for him to just basically bail the club and then sort of jump out of this burning train or something like that, the burning car or whatever. It was, it's crazy how this sort of not coincided, but how this sort of came all together right after that General Assembly when things still looked okay. So that's my sort of reconstruction of things, because they don't detail it in the report. But I think something like this must have been the main trigger. So not his health, but mainly I think this cash deficit that he could not solve.
Yeah, you're 100% right. It sounds like it was almost an impossible situation at the time. But what I wonder is, how did that cash flow issue suddenly abruptly appear like that? Like such a big deficit. That's just, I don't know.
Yeah, and that's something I'm trying to see if I can find more on it, because I think that Hassan Arat thinks that there's wrongdoing from the club side. So this cash deficit was not planned or foreseen, but for some reason it came to a like I said, it peaked at that time, and I think that's the reason why he said there was some frustration or sort of a coup against me because of this, because otherwise they could have seen this coming, right? It's weird. This cannot be a planned situation, because then they could have managed it or tried to.
So tinfoil hat for you. So when they say coup, everyone of course immediately thinks, oh, Hussein Michel. But I'm getting the sense that this was like orchestrated elsewhere, or what are your thoughts on this? Who, if you would have to put on the tinfoil hat, who orchestrated the coup, so to speak?
Well, I don't think it was Hussein, to be honest, because otherwise he could have not called for elections and still sat there, and because he already put a lot of money in, and he then could have managed until May, to be honest. So it doesn't make sense, and I think we've discussed it before, and you've also said it many times. It doesn't make sense if you look back at the decisions that were made also by Hussein. I don't know if there was really wrongdoing from inside the club and making Hassan Arat's life difficult. I think he was the main reason why things went bad this way. I don't think he can blame others. Sure, is there something that created this outside of his actions? Could be. Again, that's the tinfoil part. But I don't think it came from him, from Hussein. So it was outside of his, maybe not outside of his board, but it's definitely opponents to his presidency. Then, in that case, I would say.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ural, for your very good explanation, I think, and you made it comprehensible for a layman such as me, and I hope that our viewers also learned something interesting from it.
I hope so.
I know this kind of financial stuff isn't something that everyone finds interesting, but a lot of us Beşiktaş fans, we are amateur accountants, so we love to delve deeper into this, especially to get somebody with the expertise that you have in the financial sector to get your views on things and your analysis of it. And when a normal person like myself goes and reads these types of reports, it's like, what is this? Like, I'm not super good with numbers, so I'm very happy and grateful that you're willing to do this, Ural. So thank you very much for giving us to elaborate on this financial report, and hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Yeah, I hope so. So on Saturday there's this assembly, or sort of this discussion of the audit report. Hussein just already stated that he will be present, so that's going to be some fireworks, I think. Ahmet Nurçebi is expected that he will be there as well. Do you think that Hassan Arat will come?
I don't think so. No, I
no surprise visit.
I don't think so. No, he didn't. He say that he was done with it. That it was behind him. Beşiktaş was behind him, and he was moving on in his life or something.
Yeah. And what about Kaan Şakıl? Do you think that he will come?
I don't know. I think it'll be tough for him to show his face, because there's a lot of shady stuff there with those tenders, or non-tenders, should I say?
Yeah.
So I don't know. What do you think? You think he'll show up?
I think Kaan Şakıl is going to be. He was really a scapegoat. So apart from, I guess he's guilty. It doesn't matter that much. But to the public, to the Beşiktaş fans, he is high on the list of scapegoats. So.
And this won't make it any better. Right? This will only, if people bother to go into this, I think people will. Even watching this podcast, my main takeaway from it is, Kaan Şakıl, you didn't really do a good job there as a CFO. You did some shady shit, bro. That's my takeaway.
and not only him, it's also the other guy. The operations guy. So you're right. This is not good. And if they can't explain, which I doubt the explanation will be accepted. Difficult to show face.
To say the guy is a good Beşiktaşlı. If he's a good Beşiktaşlı, first and foremost, why is his price more expensive? Right?
Yeah.
Shouldn't his price be lower then if he's a
But
good Beşiktaşlı? Like that's a load of baloney, man. Like
He gave a discount though. It was even more expensive.
He gave a discount and it's still 200. What was it? 240k more expensive?
No, it was even higher, I think. Lighting. No, it was much higher.
Yeah.
Because it was the lighting part.
Yeah.
So it was 2,250,000 in total cost.
Yeah.
So it was substantially higher than the other offers. So.
The other tenders, well.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you? If your explanation as a CFO is we gave it to this guy because he's a good Beşiktaşlı, then I think you should be solely held accountable and pay those lights yourself, because that is absolute redonkulous. That is ridiculous. It's shameful. That is, yeah.
No, I completely agree.
Completely unacceptable. Okay. Anyway, Ural, It's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for joining us, and hopefully we can do it again in the future. We're gonna make these types of videos. I think making them in the streaming format for our members alone is pretty fun. Obviously, it was super short notice now. We didn't get a lot of activity or questions today, but hopefully as we grow the membership section, both on YouTube and on Patreon, we will be able to bring in more people with questions, and I think it will be fun in the future. So hope to have you on again in the future, Ural. And it was a pleasure talking to you. And thank you all for watching, guys. Whether you're watching this live as a member or you're watching it on delay, if you are watching it on delay and you're not a member yet, do consider becoming a member, whether it is on YouTube or it is on Patreon. On YouTube, it starts at just 99 cents for the Hatchling membership, and it's $3.99 for the VIP membership. On Patreon, it's only $1.99 for the VIP membership. And actually, I think you're gonna probably get a little bit more on Patreon because we are able to do a little bit more there. They're less strict with copyright stuff. So anyway, yeah, go and check it out. Consider becoming a member. If you don't want to leave the platform YouTube, then just click the join button. The $3.99 rank has a little bit more benefits. You're gonna get early access to videos. You're going to get you're gonna get a lot of stuff, some extra stuff, but the base membership alone already gives you a bunch of stuff, including access to these sorts of live streams to ask your questions. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you again in the near future. Bye bye.
Şimdi Bobo'nun önüne. Bobo aldı. Bobo girdi. Bobo.